Welcome back to week 3 of the fat loss nutrition course. So today we're talking through how to make diet adjustments in a fat loss phase. So last week we talked about troubleshooting common fat loss mistakes, the stall progress. If you haven't already watched that week, go back and watch it before this. All of that is very important. Really, the first 2 weeks create a solid foundation. If you're watching this, it won't make very much sense to you without having first watched those, and you'll likely just end up slashing calories unnecessarily. So if you haven't already watched the first 2 weeks, go back, work through those first. You'll get much better results if you do that. All right, and with that said, let's go ahead and get into this week's content. So first and foremost, why does fat loss stall? So like we talked about last week, most often fat loss stalls because of some miscalculation, some inconsistency in either your nutrition or your movement. But also when that's not the case, so outside of what we call human error, fat loss naturally stalls as part of metabolic adaptation. Basically, this is why you can't just keep continuously losing weight for forever eating the same calories, or our body would just kind of evaporate into thin air. So this is metabolic adaptation. Your metabolism is basically a product of your current body size, how much you're eating, and how much you are moving. So these are the components of your metabolism. These are how you burn calories. So like we talked about, fat loss comes down to, at the most simplest level, the most foundational level, calories in, calories out. If calories in are less than calories out, you're going to lose fat. Of course, again, we can make it more complex than that, but that's the most foundational principle we need to never forget to account for if you want to be successful with your diet. So these are your components of calories out. These are all the ways you burn calories. We have your basal metabolic rate. So this is just all the calories your body burns at rest. If you just laid in bed all day, didn't move a finger, this wouldn't change. This is different things like breathing, your heart pumping, for example. Normally, the bigger your body is, the higher this is. We have non-exercise activity, which is all these little things like pacing, fidgeting, blinking, taking your dog for a walk. Exercise outside of the gym that burns calories. This is a pretty big part of most people's metabolisms. It's definitely the most variable. And like I talked about in week 1, there have been studies that show up to a 2,000 calorie difference in calories burned via NEAT between lean and obese individuals. So this is why continuously over this course, I've talked about the importance of having some type of daily movement goal if you want to successfully lose fat. We have calories burned during digestion or thermic effective food. This is also something we touched on a bit in week 1, but basically your body actually burns some of the calories that you take in digesting them. Protein burns the most calories via thermic effective food. Carbs are up second, and fat is kind of at a distant third. So here, this can vary depending on your macronutrient ratios, which is another reason why it's good to really prioritize protein. And then finally, we have exercise. This tiny little sliver. For most people, exercise accounts for about 5% of the total calories they burn per day, which is why burning it off is so hard. So over the course of the diet, you're losing fat, you're crushing it, you're losing weight, but you notice your progress slows, and then stops entirely. Now, this isn't your metabolism is broken. This is good because it tells us you're making progress, you're actually losing weight. If you're not losing weight, your metabolism is not actually going to slow. So there's this idea that your metabolism can be broken. That's not the case. We can't break your metabolism unless you actually have a diagnosed thyroid issue, which in that case, go to a doctor. But it does adapt. So over time, as we lose weight, you're smaller, so your BMR is lower. We're burning fewer calories there. You're also eating fewer calories, so the calories we're burning through the thermic effect of food is decreased. A smaller body equates to fewer calories burned both in your daily movement and in the gym. It takes less effort, less energy to move your body just because it's smaller. And then finally, eating fewer calories generally leaves you with less energy. You'll feel more lethargic. So we're burning fewer calories via non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And like we talked about before, your body kind of naturally, as one of its defense mechanisms against losing weight, will decrease NEAT without you realizing it to account for you taking in less calories and kind of trying to maintain homeostasis. So all this equates to, as you lose weight, it takes fewer calories to maintain your body, and therefore we have to eventually get to the point where we decrease calories. Now, as you eat more, this process kind of works in reverse. You have more energy, so you burn more calories via NEAT, and often you have more energy to train more intensely, so we burn more calories there. As well, you're eating more, so the thermic effect of food is greater. And then, as we gain weight, basal metabolic rate increases. This is all called adaptive thermogenesis. Basically, your body upregulates and downregulates your metabolism, again, based on your current size, how much you're eating, and how much you're moving. But the biggest idea here is you don't really need to be scared of metabolic adaptation. If we're dieting smart, which you're going to be if you're following this course, this isn't something you need to be too concerned about. But this explains why it does stall, which it inevitably will, especially, I should say, if you're somebody that has a lot of weight to lose, it's more likely that your metabolism will adapt to the point where we have to make a calorie adjustment. Alright, but first and foremost, we need to know if you're actually stalled, which is why throughout this course we've talked about how important it is to track metrics. I know everyone in this course has my client's metric tracker, where we track your body weight, your biofeedback, and your body measurements weekly. Truly, metrics are everything. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they start a diet is kind of just going by feel. I feel like I'm losing weight. I feel like I'm getting lean, but I'm not sure. It's not generally the best approach, because if we don't know how your body is changing, if we don't see both your body measurements and your body weight, we don't really know what progress you're actually making. So generally with my clients, we're aiming to lose about 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. This isn't so slow that it's so, let's say you weigh 200 pounds, that's 1 to 2 pounds per week. This isn't so slow that it's just demotivating. There's also this idea that weight loss needs to happen very, very, very slowly, which also isn't the case. I think for many people that's just as demotivating as eating super low calories and feeling terrible. So it's not so slow that it's demotivating, but it's not so fast that you're on super low calories, energy plummets, and then you're losing muscle mass. Because in that case, again, we're not really, long term, it's probably detrimental to your health and your physique. So this 0.5 to 1% of body weight loss per week is a good marker. Generally what I adjust around for my clients, whether we increase the size of your calorie deficit, so decrease calories, or even dial it back and feed you more if you're losing a bit too fast. Or we're losing 0.25 inches, so a quarter inch or more from multiple measurement sites. So sometimes people won't lose any weight, like we talked about. A lot of things can cause the scale to fluctuate over the course of a week. Stress, what you ate last night. Did you have an intense training session? Did you not sleep very well last night? Is it your time of the month? There's so many factors that can affect your weight, but we also need to take this into account. So we're looking to either lose 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week, or 0.25 from multiple measurement sites. And it's also smart to give this at least 2 weeks, especially if you've been losing quickly in the near past. Like we talked about, if you've been losing rather quickly recently, like within the last couple of weeks especially, I would say within the last month on the same intake, it's likely there's something else going on with your stress that's causing your weight to kind of stick where it's at, or different food choices, or even a measurement error. Again, progress via metabolic adaptation slowly creeps to a halt. So if that's the case, we're not checking either of these boxes. We know you probably have grounds to make an adjustment. But before decreasing, one more time, make sure we can work through all of this. Because again, if right away the first thing we do is just decrease calories, you're going to get into a place very quickly where you're eating very, very little food. You feel terrible. You just unnecessarily slash calories over and over again. And it's not going to be something you're going to be able to maintain long enough to reach your end goal. So work through all of this first. Our measurements decreasing, scale weight decreasing. Biofeedback is kind of an optional one. I would focus more on these two for weight loss. Are you consistently hitting your macros? Are you measuring your food accurately? Are you consistent with your daily movement? Has it been at least 2 weeks? And then finally, we're going to go over diet breaks. Next week, have you taken a diet break in the last 12 weeks? All right, so we work through that. We know we're good. We know it's probably actually metabolic adaptation that's happening. Then it comes to actually making the adjustment. So at this point, a fat loss stall basically means that you're no longer in an energy deficit. Calories in are no longer less than calories out. They're equivalent. So we need to we need to find a way to create this imbalance again, where calories in, or calories out, are greater than calories in order to lose fat. So we can do that by either decreasing calories in or increasing calories out. Now, generally, decreasing calories in is going to be an easier option for most. Cardio can stimulate your hunger a bit, so if you really ramp up cardio, for most people, that's just not maintainable for most of us. Once we get past a couple cardio sessions per week, we can't just continuously ramp up cardio, and you don't burn that many calories in a cardio session. So for most people, this first adjustment especially is just a slight decrease in calories. Now, if your steps are relatively low, so if your NEAT is relatively low, and you feel like you can ramp that up without it taking much from your life, often we'll both do a small decrease in calories and ramp up your step goal by, say, 2,000. That's a viable option, but if you don't feel like that's something you can do, generally for this first adjustment, I like to decrease calories, which is what we're going to really focus on in the rest of today. So when we're adjusting for someone that's tracking calories and protein, generally, in most cases, decreasing by calories by 5 to 10% is enough to get progress to resume. Again, the goal is always to keep you eating as much as possible while still seeing good results. So we want to be a little bit more conservative with this generally. 5 to 10% is typically more than enough to get people back to losing 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week, or a quarter inch from multiple measurement sites. So, for example, if you're maintaining at 2,000 calories, you would decrease by 100 to 200 calories. Now, like we talked about in week 1, when we're making these decreases, we need to look at where we're actually pulling these calories from. So, basically, we always want to keep protein at 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. So, no matter what, when we're decreasing here, we're not pulling any of those calories for protein. Your protein goal is going to stay the same. This means that reduction can come from fat, carbs, or a combination of both. Now, you're tracking calories and protein because you don't want to have to overthink the ratio of fat to carbs. So, that said, you'll kind of know what foods you pull out of your diet. Like, okay, I'm going to pull out rice, or I'm going to pull out that bacon I normally eat with breakfast. Or maybe I'm decreasing olive oil or avocado, which would be more fat-heavy foods. So we kind of know still there where we're pulling. I would say if you're somebody that's going to reduce calories more via fat, that's a good idea if you're more performance focused, if you really focus on also wanting to build or maintain as much lean muscle as possible, because more carbs are really going to fuel your training performance and recovery. So you want to try to keep those as high as possible within your diet. That said, if you just prefer more of a higher fat lifestyle, which some people do, that's perfectly fine. If you just prefer fattier foods and you don't want to have to switch up your food choices a lot, it's perfectly fine to pull more from carbs. Realize it's probably not quite as optimal for building lean muscle or maintaining lean muscle, but the reality is, unless you're dieting super aggressively, we're probably not too worried about losing lean muscle, or unless you're getting super lean. So for these first couple adjustments, if you have a preference for fattier foods, pull in more from carbs is perfectly fine as well. So when we get into macros, very similar rules apply here. Now, we know that you always want to keep fat at a minimum of 0.3 grams per pound of body weight. So that's another thing we want to take into consideration. We have our protein marker, and then we have our minimum fat threshold in there. And then really taking it back to calories and protein, that's just one thing we want to make sure we do keep some fat sources in here. So we're not cutting fat entirely out of diet where you're just eating protein and carbs, because again, we won't be hitting this minimum fat threshold. And then from there, this exact same rules apply as far as, do you want to pull from carbs or do you want to pull from fat, or a combination of both. And then finally, when we're making adjustments to the handful diet, here we can decrease by 1 to 2 cup hands carbs and or a combination of 1 to 2 thumbs of fat. And this is generally enough to resume progress. So we can assume that a cupped hand of carbs or a thumb of fat is approximately 100 calories. I would say for most people, a cupped hand of carbs is about 20 to 30 grams of carbs. A thumb of fat is 6 to 15 grams of fat, which again, the handful diet isn't quite as precise. So here it's hard to make as precise of adjustments, but it's perfectly fine if this is the approach you prefer, because we can still make adjustments here. We know regardless, we're still decreasing intake, and we still have all this other data to work with to tell whether you're progressing or not. So just like before, we can assume that, okay, so like you could do 1 thumb of fat, 1 handful of carbs. You could just pull 1 handful of carbs if you only want to decrease 100 calories, or 1 thumb of fat. If you want to be more aggressive, you can pull 2 total, so 1 thumb of fat, 1 cup hand of carbs, or 2 of fat or 2 of carbs, whichever is your preference. But again, we don't decrease protein here, and really the same rules apply as far as where you're pulling from. If you want to focus more on building lean muscle, really performing in the gym, it's smart to keep your carbs in, especially those carbs you have around your workout. If you prefer fattier foods, then keep that higher, pull from carbs. So pretty simple. That's how we make these adjustments. But the biggest thing here is, first and foremost, always working through that checklist. Okay, am I really stalled? Or is this some measurement error or a consistency error? Because 95% of the time, those are the actual things we adjust, and clients start losing again on the same macros, same calories of protein, or the same handful diet intake that they were eating before. So definitely don't be overzealous going to cut calories as quickly as possible. Like we talked about, this is the last thing in our order of operations after we work through that entire checklist. All right, so that's all I have for you today. A little bit quicker than normal. Drop any questions or struggles you're having in the comments below, and we'll get it answered on the live on Thursday.